5-minute Disney Villans stories. Disney, 101 Dalmatians, Coup at the Zoo. Written by Eric Jaron. What? Cruella barked into her phone late one night. A smooth voice came over the line.
Mom, Horace is the name. Me and my best mate Jasper here would be honoured to be your humble crooks.
Cruella grinned. Not the type to get her hands dirty, but with much dirty work to do. She had put an ad in the paper in hopes of finding henchmen. It appeared she had her first candidates. Splendid! Meet me tomorrow at the local inn. 8 o'clock. Sharp. The next night, Cruella sped off to interview the two hopefuls. As she scanned the room, a ruckus erupted.
It was my smarts we used to scam this hot meal, and for some reason it's in your mouth. You wouldn't know smarts if they fell from the sky and hit you on your big head.
Cruella smiled, recognizing one of the voices. Cruella walked over to the bickering men. Enough, she said. And right away they both fell silent. Darlings, I'm Cruella de Vil. A pleasure, I'm sure. If you'd like to become my new assistants, you must convince me you're a good fit. I'd like for you to steal an animal from the new zoo. Can you do it? She jangled her purse for added effect, and the crooks eyed it with wild hunger. Just tell us when, and we'll be there, Jasper said. Horace nodded along eagerly. Excellent. We meet tomorrow at dusk at Regent's Park. The next evening, Cruella met Horace and Jasper outside the soon-to-open London Zoo.
Get in there, and quickly. Yes, ma'am. Which animal do you fancy we fetch for you, Mr. Ville?
Horace hollered.
Not so loud, Cruella scolded. That one.
She jabbed her finger at a newspaper photo of a polar bear. This'll be easy, ma'am, whispered Jasper. Like taking babies from a candy. He nodded confidently. Be right back.
All right now. Easy does it.
Jasper guided Horace, who was working a large net into the sleeping polar bear's cage. But it turned out the animal was in no mood to be bear-napped. You just had to wake it up, didn't you? Jasper shouted at Horace as they made a hasty retreat.
Well, you wasn't exactly quite yourself,
Horace shot back. Cruella turned crimson when she saw the duo without her promised prize. You cowards, she sputtered.
Oh, we're sorry, Ma'am, Horace said. What about a smaller animal? A cheetah, perhaps?
Cruella glared at them. Finally, she sighed. I do have a soft spot for, well, spots. She cackled, then quickly scowled at the two men. All right, a cheetah. And I'm coming with you this time to make sure you don't mess this up. But the cheetah was too fast for the slow-witted crooks. And when Horace and Jasper failed to steal a lion next, Cruella grew even more furious. When they failed at thieving an elephant, Cruella's eye began to twitch. It seemed clear as day that Horace and Jasper did not have what it took to crook. But Cruella was willing to give them one final shot. Try stealing one of the more docile little beasts, she instructed them. Do it, and do it now. Horace and Jasper wasted no time breaking into the children's petting zoo. We've got this one in the can, mate, Jasper said to Horace as they sauntered into the animal pens. But then the baby llamas spit in their faces, the piglets chased them into the mud, and the ducklings pecked at them in the pond. Outside the petting zoo, Cruella was growing more and more impatient. Suddenly, the men appeared, and they ran right past her. "Stampede!" yelled Jasper. "Run!" shouted Horace. Cruella craned her neck to see the massive beasts that had inspired such terror in her would-be underlings. But all that scampered into view were fuzzy ducklings, muddy piglets, sweet baby llamas, and bleating baby goats. Cruella boiled over, realizing that Horace and Jasper must have accidentally released the petting zoo animals. "Idiots!" she yelled. She'd had enough of Horace and Jasper's hijinks. "You complete imbeciles!" she shouted as they ran past her again. She looked around. What an utter disaster. Were these really the best henchmen she could find? Cruella would have to do everything herself. One beastly animal she could have gotten away with, but she didn't want the police on high alert because someone had stolen the entire children's petting zoo. "I'll handle this," she grumbled. She retrieved her car and corralled all the animals back into their cages and pens. Eventually. "My car! It's filthy! You are good for nothing! You can't even clean up your own mess! Didn't I mention I hate getting my hands dirty?" Cruella roared at Horace and Jasper. "This is the last time I ever work with you! You—" "Idiots?" Horace suggested. "Complete imbeciles?" Jasper offered. "Shut up!" Cruella screamed. The men flinched. Cruella was fuming. She stomped off into the night. Horace and Jasper looked at each other and shrugged, thinking of how they could make it up to Cruella. A little while later, Cruella sagged up the stairs to her room at the manor. She opened the door, and her jaw dropped. Her bedroom had been completely transformed. The furniture had all been uncovered, and everything sparkled like new. Just then, there was a tap on her door. Horace and Jasper were standing in the hallway. "Now you don't have to get your hands any dirtier than they are," Horace burst out, triumphant. "We can't fix up our own messes, but we sure could fix up yours, Mum," added Jasper. "You did, didn't you? Well, you did a rather mediocre job." But Cruella couldn't fight the smile. It is kind of nice to have company here. It can get a bit lonely. "Okay, fine. I'll have you two as my assistants." Horace and Jasper cheered as Cruella flopped down on her newly made bed, dirt and all. "Now, let's see if your bacon is better than your thieving."
Disney, Peter Pan, The Curse of the Crow. Written by Megan Bryant and originally published in Scary Storybook Collection. There was nothing Smee hated more than gathering firewood. Not even swabbing the decks, But Captain Hook had given him his orders. Smee was wandering through the woods when he smelled smoke. He chuckled. If somebody gathered wood for a bonfire, they've done the work for me. In a nearby clearing, Smee found Peter Pan, Tinker Bell, Wendy, John, and Michael sitting around a crackling fire. "Tell us a scary story, Wendy," Peter Pan said. A sly smile crossed Wendy's face. "Have you ever heard of the curse of the crow?" she asked. The boys shook their heads. "Long ago, there lived a wise old crow," Wendy began. "Though he was wise, he envied the cleverness of people. Since he could not compete with them, he cursed them instead. There were 4 signs that you had been cursed," Wendy continued. "First, there would be bird tracks, then soot in the soap, and sudden fits of sneezing. But worst of all—" What was worst?" the boys chorused. "A single black feather would appear on your pillow," Wendy said. "That meant that the crow had cursed you for life." Just then, a caw, caw, caw rang through the clearing. Everyone around the bonfire jumped. Smee, who was hiding in the bushes, was so scared that his knees started knocking together. He grabbed the nearest pile of twigs and skedaddled all the way back to the Jolly Roger. "Oh, Peter," Wendy said with a laugh. "That was a perfectly timed caw, I should say." Peter grinned. He had noticed Smee hiding in the bushes and thought to give him a good scare. He was sure the pirate would be shaking for the rest of the night. "I'll put out the fire," Peter said, as it was getting close to bedtime. As he splashed a pail of water onto the bonfire, Peter had an idea. He beckoned to John and Tink. "I know how to teach that Smee a lesson once and for all," he began. "But first, we'll need a pine branch, some flowers, and all this soggy soot." Meanwhile, Smee had made it back to the Jolly Roger. "Captain! Captain!" he cried breathlessly as he ran onto the ship. "What is it, the crocodile?" Captain Hook shrieked, jumping. "No," Smee replied. "It's the curse of the crow." He told the crew Wendy's story, but none of the other pirates were scared. "Why, there ain't never been a crow in Neverland," one of the pirates jeered. "But I heard one," Smee protested. While Smee was telling the pirates Wendy's story, Peter Pan, Tink, and John snuck onto the Jolly Roger. Peter whispered, "Tink, you're up." Tink dipped a pine sprig into the pail of wet soot. Then she flew around the ship, leaving dirty marks that looked just like bird tracks. When Smee saw the marks, he gasped. "Bird tracks!" he exclaimed. "It's the curse of the crow!" But Captain Hook did not believe in the curse. He just saw a big mess. "You call this shipshape?" he bellowed at his crew. "Swab the decks at once, or you'll walk the plank!" Smee scrambled to add soap powder to pails of water. "They'll see," he grumbled. "The curse is real." "Your turn, John," Peter whispered. "Hurry!" When Smee's back was turned, John dashed forward and sprinkled soot into the pails. When the pirates started mopping the deck, they made the mess even worse. "Oh, no," Smee moaned, hiding his eyes. "The crow's curse is happening just the way Wendy said it would." "A cursed ship's not fit to sail," one of the pirates said. "The only curse you have to worry about is from me if you don't clean this up," Captain Hook growled. "Now, Tink," Peter whispered. Tinker Bell grabbed the bunch of flowers and flew high into the air. Then she shook the flowers, sprinkling pollen all over the pirates. "Nice clean soap, turned black and murky as mud," one of the pirates said. "Something strange is afoot." Yes, Hook muttered. Achoo! Sneezing, gasped Smee. The next stage of the crow's curse. But the pirates were sneezing so loudly that no one could even hear him. We are doomed, Smee howled between sneezes. Now see here, Captain Hook said when his sneezing fit finally died down. There is no curse of the crow. This is more like the work of a rascal. What do you mean, Captain? Smee asked. Peter Pan is trying to make fools of us all, Hook explained. Search the ship and seize that scoundrel! Aye, aye, Captain, the pirates yelled. That's our cue, Peter told the others. Away we go! Captain, look! Smee said in astonishment as he spotted two figures flying past the full moon. What did I tell you? Captain Hook gloated, pushing past Smee and making his way toward his cabin. I knew there would be an explanation for all this silliness. Oh, you were right, Captain, Smee said, breathing a sigh of relief. It was just Peter Pan. After all, it's not like anyone found a crow's feather on his pillow. Now that would be really scary. Imagine being cursed for life. You imagine it, Captain Hook retorted. I'm going to bed. Captain Hook took his key and unlocked the door to his cabin. Cursed for life, he said with a chuckle as he lit a candle. Poppycock! Then he saw it, a single dark feather right on his pillow. Captain Hook's face grew very pale. Peter Pan? He stammered. But how? The cabin had been locked, and Captain Hook had already seen him fly away. Perhaps the curse of the crow was real after all.
Disney, The Little Mermaid. Choral Festival Chaos. Written by Karen Davis. Ursula the Sea Witch was always grumpy, but that day she was in an especially foul mood. She was deep in her lair with Flotsam and Jetsam. "What day is it today?" she called to the eels. "It's the beginning of the choral festival," Flotsam and Jetsam said in unison. It was time for King Triton's annual choral festival, when all the merpeople gathered together to celebrate the beauty and splendor of the ocean's choral. The merfolk loved the festival, but Ursula despised the celebration. "Too much joy," complained the villainess. Ursula peered through her crystal ball and scowled as she watched King Triton welcome his guests. "How kind of you all to join us. My daughters and I have a fun-filled festival planned for you." The merfolk cheered and clapped for the exciting day ahead. "I can't wait for the race," exclaimed one mermaid. "My favorite event is the water ballet," another one chimed in. "Nothing beats the parade," said a third. "Know what would make me happy?" sneered Ursula. "Making those cheery merpeople unhappy." "Flotsam, Jetsam, we've got a choral festival to spoil, starting with that silly sea race." She whispered her plan to her eels, and they swam off toward Atlantica. King Triton and all his merfolk friends gathered outside the castle gates to watch the race. Little did they know, Ursula and her minions were watching too. 1, 2, 3! The merpeople swam by at amazing speeds. They swam around rocks and between coral, racing for the finish line. But Ursula was ready for them. She hid behind the biggest rock and waited. As they passed, Ursula stretched out her mighty tentacles and thrashed them, hoping to scare off the merfolk. But the giant wave only helped the racers swim faster. The merpeople clapped and cheered for the winners of the race. Ursula watched in frustration as King Triton awarded trophies to them. But she had more tricks up her sleeve. "Not to worry. I have an even better idea," Ursula said with a cackle, noticing the dancers in the distance. "We're going to wreck the water ballet." So Ursula, Flotsam, and Jetsam snuck into the concert hall, where the orchestra played a soft, soothing tune. On stage, the mermaid ballerinas spun, swayed, and sashayed in sync with the music. Ursula snickered. These poor, unfortunate dancers are about to lose their rhythm. She placed a record on the phonograph. The record's loud rock music drowned out the sound of the symphony. "Now the choral festival will be spoiled for sure," she sneered. As the new beat filled the concert hall, all the dancers looked at each other confused. Then, one by one, everyone began to catch on. The dancers started rocking out to the brand new song. In her hiding place, Ursula frowned. Once again, Ursula's evil plan had backfired. The audience tapped their fins to the catchy beat and cheered on the dancers. "Those cheery merfolk are enjoying the choral festival more than ever," harumphed Ursula as she shattered the phonograph records. That's when Ursula saw King Triton swoosh by. "Of course, it's time for the parade," she cried with an evil twinkle in her eye. "That's how I'll spoil the festival. We'll build our own float and join the procession," she plotted. "The merfolk will be so scared when I appear. Oh my, this is going to be fun!" The parade route wound through a glorious reef covered in coral. All the merfolk gathered around to watch in awe. They applauded as the floats went by, carrying the champions of the race and the dancers, who all waved as they passed. Ursula hurried to join the parade, but the finale began before she could catch up. All the colorful coral opened, creating a brilliant spectacle that blocked the sea witch's way. The merfolk oohed and awed at the vibrant colors. They all agreed that this had been the best choral festival yet. "No!" Ursula cried. She had failed to spoil any of the fun at the choral festival. The merpeople were happier than ever. In the foulest mood, Ursula rode away on her float, back to her lair to form her next evil plan.
Disney, Sleeping Beauty, a message for Maleficent, written by Liz Rudnick and originally published in Scary Storybook collection. It was a time of celebration. King Stephen was getting married. The king's subjects rejoiced. But no one was happier than the three good fairies, Flora, Fauna, and Merryweather. They hurried to the castle to help the king and his future bride. Princess Leia had many ideas for her wedding, but she did not know whom to invite. She wanted to make sure no one in the kingdom was missed, so she asked the good fairies to make and deliver the invitations. "Blue wedding invitations," Merryweather said. "Can you think of anything lovelier?" With a flick of her wand, she created a stack of blue envelopes. "Oh no, that won't do. They should be pink," Flora said, changing the envelopes to a pale pink. Back and forth the envelopes went, until at last they settled on a light purple that both fairies had to agree was quite nice. On the other side of the room, Fauna was hard at work on the guest list. "We don't need to invite too many people," she said. Flora looked up. "Do you think we should invite—" Her voice trailed off. "Maleficent?" Merryweather asked. The fairy Maleficent lived high on the Forbidden Mountain. Her presence rarely brought any good cheer, but still she was one of the king's subjects. With a sigh, Fauna nodded. "I suppose we must," she said. Merryweather shuddered. Just thinking about Maleficent gave her the shivers. "Who will we get to deliver the invitation?" she asked. "The way to Maleficent's castle is treacherous, and we cannot risk the invitation getting lost." "One of us will have to go," Flora said. She flicked her hand, and a dove appeared from her wand. It circled the room 3 times and then landed on Merryweather's shoulder. It was up to her to deliver the invitation to Maleficent. The next day, Merryweather set off for Maleficent's castle. By evening, she had reached the woods around the Forbidden Mountain. Her magic was weak there. She would have to walk. Merryweather looked at a winding path that led into the woods. It was getting dark, and the wind moaned eerily through the trees. Shivering, Merryweather pulled her wand out of her cloak pocket. With a flick of her wrist, she lit the wand. The warm light comforted her, and she bravely continued on the path. Alas, Merryweather was not alone in the woods. Maleficent's minions, the goons, were out patrolling. Even worse for poor Merryweather, the evil creatures loved causing mischief. "I'll be there soon. Everything will be fine," Merryweather told herself as she tried to take her mind off the spookiness of the dark woods. But as she went around a curve in the path, 3 of the goons jumped out at her. Screaming, Merryweather ran down the path as fast as her little legs would carry her. Finally, she lost the goons. "Those wicked creatures," she said when she had calmed down. "I'd like to scare them and see how they'd like it." Merryweather looked around. Somehow, it seemed the woods had grown even darker. A cold wind blew through the trees, chilling the little fairy to the core. Merryweather wanted nothing more than to turn back, but the other fairies were counting on her. As Merryweather made her way down the path, she noticed the trees growing closer and closer together. Large thorns stuck out from the trunks, making it impossible to get through without a scratch. "Oh, fiddlesticks!" she yelled as her cloak caught on a thorn. Merryweather freed herself from the tree and hurried away as carefully as she could. The sooner she delivered the invitation, the sooner she could get back to the bright, warm castle. Finally, Merryweather reached the edge of the woods. A giant stone staircase loomed above her, leading to Maleficent's lair. Up, up, up Merryweather climbed until at last she came to a rickety bridge. On the other side was Maleficent's castle. Its jagged peaks rose into the sky, and a dark storm cloud circled overhead. Merryweather looked nervously at the bridge. It seemed like it could collapse at any moment. Tucking the invitation into her cloak, she stepped onto the bridge. The wood shook and creaked with every step the little fairy took. Merryweather kept her eyes on the stone landing ahead of her. Below her was a deep chasm. If the bridge gave out, she would have a long way to fall. Finally, Merryweather reached the other side. As she stepped onto the landing, a blast of green magic burst out of Maleficent's castle, and a loud scream filled the air. That was the last straw for Merryweather. She took out the invitation and carefully placed it on the castle's doorstep. Then she raced back across the bridge, down the steps, and through the woods. She was so busy running away, she didn't see the goons who had been following her pick up the invitation and scamper off with it. Merryweather didn't stop until she reached King Stephen's castle. She found Flora and Fauna in the Great Hall. "Why, Merryweather, dear, whatever is the matter?" Flora asked. "Maleficent had better come to this wedding," Merryweather said when she had caught her breath. "The journey to deliver the invitation nearly scared me to death." Flora smiled at Merryweather. "Come now," she said. "How bad could it really have been?" Soon the day of King Stephen and Princess Leah's wedding arrived. Everyone in the kingdom gathered for the happy event. Everyone, that is, except for Maleficent. From high on the Forbidden Mountain, the fairy gazed down on the celebration. "Look at those fools," she said. "Who do they think they are, not inviting me to their celebration? Well, enjoy it while you can. I'll get you for this. Someday."